Diamond P Sports presents the fastest sport on wheels, championship drag racing. Symbolic of the completion of another season of championship drag racing. This race brings to a close the World Championship Series, with the battle still being waged in the two top pro categories. Just a few hundred points separate Rob Bruins and defending world champ Kelly Brown in Top Fuel, while in Funny Car, Raymond Beadle holds a very slim lead over four-time world champion Don Prudhomme. Hello everybody, I'm Dave McClelland, and a lot of stories have been developing the past couple of days here at the World Finals. Working with me to bring you those stories is Steve Evans.
Dave, this Winston World Finals signifies the end of a tough but exciting NHRA season of championship drag racing. To the racers, it means they finally know what their share of $175,000 in bonus cash will be, plus a $250,000 event purse. The Top Fuel World Championship battle ended here in the staging lanes yesterday in dramatic fashion when Kelly Brown simply ran out of time.
That's right, Steve. The last few weeks have not been good for Kelly Brown, the defending world champion. Kelly and the Over-the-Hill gang had to completely rebuild their car after an exploding clutch in the finals of the Fall Nationals severely damaged the dragster. In his previous qualifying attempts here at Ontario, Kelly fell short of the mark, and with time running out yesterday, the crew was hard at work trying to find the horsepower and traction combination that would qualify for the 16-car field. Kelly came into the World Finals just 506 points behind the leader, Rob Bruins, and he had to qualify to continue his quest to become the first person ever to repeat as world champion. This has been a great season for Kelly, winning the Gator Nationals, the Cajun Nationals, the Mile High Nationals, and the 25th Annual U.S. Nationals. But this was not his weekend, as Kelly and the car were both ready for a final attempt when time ran out and qualifying ended. A tough way to end the year for Kelly Brown, the 1978 world champion, who now passes the crown and title to Rob Bruins.
Dave, a very disappointed Kelly Brown, who has qualified for something like 19 consecutive NHRA national events. A record for any Top Fuel driver, has failed to make the field here at the World Finals. Robbie Bruins, a little bit of tears in his eyes. The dream of every kid that ever went down a drag strip, to be the Top Fuel world champion. Robbie Bruins does it. Kelly Brown?
We'll be opening the gate.
Kelly, and you know how he feels right now. You did the same thing last year.
Well, I have to know. You know, I just climbed out of the car. It's a very, very disappointing feeling, not only for myself, but for all our guys who worked so hard. But we did well. We tried as hard as we could, and it's a fantastic sport. And my thanks go out to everyone that helped us all year long. And
Robbie, how do you feel right now?
Well, I'm really elated. I wish Gaines was here because it's been a team effort all the way, and this is a dream come true, or another overnight success. We've only been doing it about 15, 20 years.
Rob Bruins reflecting on his and car owner Gaines Barkley's long, hard road to the 1979 World Championship. We'll be back with Top Fuel eliminations in just a moment. They've taken to the grassy hillsides at Ontario Motor Speedway as one of the largest crowds ever to witness a drag race has jammed the grandstands of this massive facility. The World Finals, of course, the end of the World Championship Series, carrying points toward that championship, but also carries with it an event title. Some of the racers that we'll be watching in Top Fuel eliminations include Dwight Salisbury, the driver for Larry Frazier. His competition will be Hank Johnson, Gentleman Hank from Marysville, Washington. The new world champion, Rob Bruins, driving for car owner Gaines Barkley. Former world champion, Shirley Muldowney. The grand old man of Top Fuel Racing, Big Daddy Don Garlands. Against Dave Yahara, the driver for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Dave Settles, the driver of Raymond Beadle's Blue Max, who'll have a bye run in this round of eliminations. Dwight Salisbury getting backed up after his burnout. He had the lane choice by virtue of a quicker elapsed time in the first round of eliminations. He chose the left lane and gave this man one of his toughest jobs, and that is negotiating the very tricky right-hand lane, which has been deteriorating rapidly as this event wears on. Qualifying started on Friday. It was very quick as Hank Johnson qualified with a fine 5-second time. But since that time, particularly the right-hand lane has been getting a lot worse. Let's see how he fares. Both cars go up in smoke, but Dwight Salisbury recovers first and wins the race by just a few feet. 6.33 seconds elapsed time to Hank Johnson's losing 6:36. Watching again, we see Hank Johnson up in smoke. Dwight Salisbury the same, but Salisbury recovers very quickly and pulls away and holds on at the finish line to take the victory over Hank Johnson. Here's Steve.
Dwight Salisbury got down here, Dave, and didn't even know who won. You did.
It was close. He was right there. I saw him on the light.
300ths of a second, Dwight.
Well, that was...
Whoever recovers first from the tire smoking.
Yeah, we got awful loose. I shifted it as quick as I could, and I didn't think I was going to catch him. But it was pulling hard on top. What was our speed?
Oh, I didn't hear the speed. Is the track getting any better, Dwight, or is it deteriorating?
We didn't change it any, and it smoked the tires that time, so my guess it's going away. We might have to back her down a little bit.
Okay, Dwight Salisbury says it's not getting any better out there, Dave.
Steve, it's going to be a driver's race. There's no doubt about that, as we have on the starting line a pair of world champions. The 1977 world champ, the only lady licensed to drive the Top Fuel dragsters, Shirley Muldowney. She is competing against the new world champion, Rob Bruins, driving for Gaines Markley. And it is Shirley with the lane that has been giving everybody such trouble. That smoke you see coming off the tires, that is literally burning the rubber. They are burning those tires as there's not enough traction to handle the 2,000 horsepower. The lane choice going to Rob Bruins. He takes the left lane, obviously the better of the two. Shirley has got to try to master that tricky right-hand lane. And she smokes the tires. Rob Bruins pulls ahead and maintains about a car length lead to the finish line. It's Rob Bruins winning it 6.18 seconds. He'd love to double up, take the World Championship title and the World Finals event title all in the same day. You can see as he pulls away, Shirley Muldowney losing traction, giving the lead at that point to Rob Bruins, and he was never to be headed at the finish line. Shirley ran 238 miles an hour to try to catch Rob in a valiant effort.
Dave, Rob Bruins running over to give a hug and condolences to Shirley Muldowney. Shirley, he's living up to that World Championship title, isn't he?
Oh, he sure is. He'd make a great world champion.
And you had it a few years ago. Make a nice couple. Good for drag racing, both of you.
Thanks, Steve.
I'm following in some excellent footsteps. There's been great champions ahead of me. It's an honor, really an honor.
He's good for drag racing, isn't he, Steve?
Oh, you both are. Shirley Muldowney and Rob Bruins, class drag racers.
First class all the way, Steve, as Shirley the 1977 world champion, Rob Bruins, of course, the 79. The grand old man, Big Daddy Don Garlitz, has the lane choice, and he's taken, obviously, the left-hand lane, as Dave Yohara with a real strong burnout. This is intentional, that smoking of the tires. The reason the tires work much better when they are hot, and the burnout is done out of a puddle of water. Here, let's watch. You see the tires starting to spin very rapidly and the smoke coming off of them, burning the rubber. It does two things. It heats them up, it gets them clean, and it puts more rubber on the racetrack. But all the burnouts in the world have not helped that right-hand lane thus far. And Dave Yohara, with the good, the bad, and the ugly, that's the team of Velasco, Cohen, and Oswald, is picking on one of the toughest Top Fuel racers ever. Over 2 decades, sitting behind at first, and then credited with developing the first workable rear-engine dragster, is Don Garlitz. Yohara, one of the better West Coast drivers, has been on the National Trail this season. But this is his toughest one of the year, as he's got the grand old man, Big Daddy Don Garlitz, putting down his face mask, getting ready for this run down the Ontario quarter mile. Garlitz leads very hard. Yohara smokes the tires, almost to be expected. And look at Garlitz with the lead. And how about this? Low elapsed time of eliminations, 6.06. His speed, 240 miles an hour. And not a wisp of tire smoke off Big Daddy's car, as by about a 6 car length or more lead and extending it, he beats Dave Yohara.
6:06.
We've called this a driver's race, and there's no better driver of a Top Fuel dragster today than Big Daddy Don Garlits. Over 20 years of driving Top Fuel cars down racetracks all over the world has certainly made this crafty veteran the favorite in this event, as he holds low elapsed time thus far at 6.06 seconds. Dave Settles at the wheel of the Blue Max. He has a bye run, a single. His competition was to have been Larry Dixon. He had an easy go in round one as Dixon's competition, Terry Capp, broke on the starting line, but Larry crossed the center line during his run and was disqualified. So a single for Dave Settles in the Blue Max, trying for lane choice. Let's see if he gets it. And a 6.28 second, no lane choice for Dave Settles. We'll be back here at Ontario Motor Speedway in the World Finals as we'll take a look at the funny car battle for the World Champ title. After a full season of racing in the World Championship Series, only 324 points separate Raymond Beadle from the defending world champ, Don Prudhomme. Earlier today, Steve talked to both racers.
Don Prudhomme, you've owned that #1 on the side of your car for 4 consecutive years. What do you have to accomplish today to keep it?
Well, it's going to be a difficult chore. If I go to the last round with Raymond Beadle, along the way, I'd have to set both ends of the national record. In track conditions the way they are, that looks doubtful. Or Raymond Beadle has to go out first round or second round, and I need to win the race.
You'd like to have qualified higher where you had lane choice?
Well, I certainly would, yeah. It's been a difficult track for us here, and we've been having our share of problems, and it's unfortunate at the end of the year that that happens.
And Tom McEwen will go right after you round one.
Oh, yeah, certainly, but I'm going to go right after him, too, and the race isn't over, and we'll see.
Raymond Beadle, the Funny Car World Championship is within your grasp here today. Just exactly what does the Blue Max crew have to do to take that #1 off of Don Prudhomme's car and put it on yours?
Of course, we need to stick within one round of Snake, but primarily we're concentrating on winning the race, because we win the race, we'll definitely have the championship.
Now, do you feel you have an advantage? You're qualified quicker? Maybe you've got a handle on it?
We do have a little advantage there. We qualified in the top half of the field. Snake qualified in the bottom half, which gives us lane choice, and I think that's going to be very decisive in this race, being that yesterday and the day before, the tire lane was definitely had an advantage over the other one.
That's the way it was earlier. Right now, the first of these two critical races is on the starting line at Ontario Motor Speedway. Raymond Beadle of Dallas, Texas, the famed Blue Max. It's been a long season, and it was just a couple of weeks ago when Beadle moved ahead of Prudhomme by 324 points when he won the Fall Nationals title at Seattle International Raceway. Raymond also winning the Summer Nationals in his quest for the lead in the World Championship Series. His competition on the line right now is Jeb Adolph, and Adolph is having problems with Pat Johnson's car. He cannot get it into reverse. He's down track after his burnout, trying to get the car to back up. Now, here it comes back. He may be having problems with the shifter, and what a break that would be for Raymond Beadle in this first round. As he said earlier, he needs to win each round and stay ahead of Don Prudhomme in his quest for the World Champions title. Again, still some problems with Adolph as Beadle begins to move to the starting line, and he may get the break that he needed. A single in the first round for Raymond Beadle. And the all-important World Championship Series points keeps mounting for the Blue Max. The elapsed time, only 6.63, but the most important thing is the round win to keep him ahead of the Snake.
Well, that's one down. That must relieve a little of the tension, the pressure.
Well, that's a little bit. This one here is the one that's going to decide, though, Steve.
On the starting line right now.
McEwen said, don't worry.
Is that what he said?
Well, he told me, so we'll see what him and Billy Bones come up with.
Don Prudhomme needs to win this race to stay alive in his quest for an unprecedented 5th World Champion title. That would make him 5 in a row, unheard of in all of motorsports. Thousands of eyes on the starting line, and none with more interest than Raymond Beadle's crew.
Dave, the Blue Max crew walking out to the edge of the racetrack, all but praying for Tom the Mongoose McEwen. McEwen assured him, I'll get him for you guys. We'll see.
And they're on the starting line finishing their burnout procedure. Tom McEwen, the Mongoose, Don Prudhomme, the Snake. They've met many times before, but for Don Prudhomme, this is the most critical in his quest for the World Champion title. The burnouts are finished. They're approaching the starting line at Ontario Motor Speedway. And it'll be Tom McEwen out first. Prudhomme smokes the tires. It's over.
Dave, it is absolute bedlam down here. The Blue Max crew has gone crazy. They are the world champions. How do you feel right now?
Well, we're glad we won, but like I told Snake, I'm sorry we just had to end it up with a track like this where we both didn't really get to run for it. But we've always wanted this, and it's something we dreamed about. But
it's everybody's dream.
Yeah. So
good for business, too.
Yeah, it won't hurt it at all. Thank you a lot.
Number 1, Raymond Beadle in the Blue Max.
Ray Beadle goes over to congratulate Tom McEwen on that very important first-round victory over Don Prudhomme. As we get ready to go into the second round of racing, let's meet the drivers. Ron Colson driving the Hawaiian. He'll be racing against Tom McEwen. You saw him beat the Snake in round number 1. Trip Shoemake driving for Johnny Loper out of Phoenix, Arizona. His competition, the new world champion, Raymond Beadle. The winner of the U.S. Nationals and the Gator Nationals earlier this year, Gordy Bonin. From Waco, Texas, comes his competition, Billy Meyer. John Force from Fullerton, California, against Tom Ridings, who's driving for Joe Pisano. And it's the second round of racing, and Tom McEwen, while he won his race over the Snake in round number 1, he didn't go quick enough to get lane choice. That goes to Ron Colson. And still the racetrack providing lots of problems for all these drivers. We'll see if McEwen's got it figured out. He had the good lane the first round. Now he's got the bad lane. Can he pull it out again? And Colson's car makes a bit of a move to the center line, but it moves way ahead of Tom McEwen. And Ron Colson wins at 6.35 seconds at 236 miles an hour. A fine time. You see Colson driving away from the center line as McEwen just not enough horsepower to pull him across the finish line ahead of Colson. Ron Colson, the crew of Roland Leong's Hawaiian, heading down to pick him up. Colson, one of the finer drivers around the country, going over, offering condolences to Tom McEwen. But McEwen had his victory in round 1 when he defeated Prudhomme. And here's the world champion, Raymond Beadle. And Beadle also in round 1 won his race, won the world championship, but lost the lane choice. Trip Shoemake gets it, driving Johnny Loper's Little Hoss out of Phoenix, Arizona. But Beadle, a very crafty veteran. Maybe he's got it figured out, that tricky right-hand lane. Both cars now staged. Let's see. Shoemake up in smoke, and Beadle up close to him, but just no horsepower at the finish line, as there it is. Trip Shoemake wins it, 6.60 seconds, and an elated crew as Shoemake now moves into the semifinals with that win over the world champion. Coming up, we'll take a look as we see the two cars pulling off the track, just how it happened. As Shoemake strikes the tires right there, you can see the car lunge when he changes gears, and he pulls ahead of Beadle. Beadle way down on power, trying to get off the starting line without smoking the tires. He did, but he lost the race.
Trip Shoemake and his pretty wife Susie from Phoenix, Arizona, celebrating going into the semifinals. Been a long time since you've seen the semis, Tripper.
Last time I got here was Englishtown, and then I ended up stumbling against Raymond. And we had a hard season, and the track is less than ideal today. But Loper and I never give up. This guy's tough, boy. I mean, we can knock him down. He comes right back.
Don Garlitz was talking down here earlier. He says he's taking powder out of his car and going quicker.
Yeah, the thing is, with the way our fuel system's set up, we take power out, we drop off a half a second. Right now, I just learned how to drive on a dirt track. I can just drive her on down.
Okay, going into the semifinal round is Trip Shoemake, also known as 240 Shorty.
And a tough racetrack faces Waco Billy Meyer, and a tough competitor in that other lane is Gordy Bonin. The Canadian has already won the U.S. Nationals this year and set a new speed record at over 246 miles an hour for Gordy Bonin. But Billy Meyer has a twofold job here. One, he has got to defeat Bonin, which is hard enough, but he's also got to figure out that right-hand lane, which has proved very difficult so far today. He leads tries well, but there's no power there. As you can see, Gordy Bonin just pulls away to a very easy win, a fine 6.40. His speed 234 miles an hour. Bonin moves into the semifinals. Here you see they leave the starting line together, and right there at that point the race is over unless something breaks, because Bonin moves well ahead of Billy Meyer and takes an easy win to go into the semis. Bonin, as we said, had won the U.S. Nationals this year. Here we watch him as he comes out of his car using the escape hatch in the roof rather than coming out the side of the car or waiting for a crew member to lift up the body. The Canadian Gordy Bonin winning the U.S. Nationals and setting that speed record at over 246 miles an hour, also has a Gator Nationals win to his credit in 1979. From Fullerton, California comes the Corvette of John Force. This is the final race in the second round of funny car eliminations. Alongside of Force and in the left-hand lane, or the good lane, is Joe Pisano's car, driven by Tom Ridings. Ridings has advanced up from the Pro Comp ranks. Those are the alcohol-burning funny cars. Now in the nitro burner of Joe Pisano and smoking the tires, going all over the racetrack is Ridings. He's still in it, but from behind comes John Force, just sticking with it at 7.23 seconds. Hardly any time to talk about, but it's all important as to who gets to the finish line first. The times really mean very little except for lane choice, but it's who's at the finish line first. That's what counts. The losing time for Tom Ridings was a 7:27. As we watch, we see Ridings going up in smoke just a few hundred feet off the starting line. The car drifting sideways. He gets it back straight. It goes sideways again. He drives it straight again. He gets back in it on the power, but here comes Force, and look at the Corvette move by just at the very few final feet.
John Force, that's one you might have thought you lost had you not stuck with it.
Steve, I made one of those all-time screw-ups. I left the starting line in high gear. I can't believe I did it. My car was weird acting. I went out there and just did everything wrong. Pedaled it, hit it, but I seen he was in trouble. I recovered it, reached down and shifted it in high gear, and I was in high gear. I got to apologize to my guys because they worked hard, and I screwed it up, and the Lord just let us pull that one right out of the bag.
You've got a reprieve as you go to the semifinals. You'll never do that again, probably.
Oh, I'm going to make a lot of mistakes before this thing's over, but that's a killer to be that dumb. It's dumb. It's the pressure. When I got in the glue box, the car was sideways coming out, and I had to pedal it, so I thought, well, I'll leave it in high gear and try to do another drive with it to save from wearing the clutch. And when I backed up, my whole program changed, and I never thought to put it back in low, and it was just one of those dumb...
Seems to me it takes a heck of a guy to admit it.
I'm a heck of a guy.
Okay, John Force goes into the semifinals with the Wendy's car.
We'll be back with more racing from the World Finals in just a moment. Back at Ontario Motor Speedway in the National Hot Rod Association World Finals, a special treat for the fans. This is a replica of a 1929 Model A Ford panel truck driven by none other than Wild Bill Shrewsbury. Behind Bill sits an alcohol-burning supercharged Hemi engine that puts the panel truck on its rear wheels. And it stays on its rear wheels all the way through the quarter mile and a lot more. Sparks flying from the skid plates at the back of the car. The Model A Berry Wagon heads down the track. Wild Bill Shrewsbury at the controls. Well past the finish line, Bill Shrewsbury sets it down. A real treat for the fans at the World Finals. In the pits, another treat for another man.
Well, Dave, if Raymond Beadle was at all down about losing here in the second round, I think his spirits just took a sudden rise. Wandering through the pit area, we find Harvey Chandler of the English Leather Company presenting Raymond Beadle with a check for $10,000. A nice little bonus for the World Championship.
I thought that would be a nice kicker.
For Raymond, a $10,000 bonus on top of the $15,000 World Champion prize. In other action, World Champs were crowned in the sportsman category. In stock eliminator, Ray Cook gave away the head start in this handicap race to the Ford Mustang of Jeff Powers. But halfway down the course, here comes Ray Cook, and the Hillside, New Jersey native takes the stock eliminator title. She became the 7th woman ever to win an NHRA national event, and Amy Falk defeated Bob Marshall to win the Superstock World Champion crown. Amy Falk. It was his 5th trip to the final round, And he finally pulled it out as Garley Daniels Jr. defeated Jim Allen. Daniels, driving the Chevrolet, won the world champion title in modified eliminator. In competition, the big head start went to Larry Torres, but the roadster of Robert Newberry came from behind and was first to the finish line for the competition eliminator world champion title. In Pro Comp, it was his 6th event win of the season. He is the Grace Cup champion and now the world champion, Billy Williams of Torrance, California, defeating Brian Raymer. In Pro Stock Motorcycle, Terry Vance in the near lane going a little bit crooked as Bob Carpenter took that measure to take the win. In Top Fuel Motorcycle, the runner-up at the U.S. Nationals, Jim Bernard, defeated Pee Wee Gleason at the World Finals. Back to racing, and it is Pro Stock Eliminator's semifinal round. Dino Don Nicholson of Orange, California at the wheel of the Ford Mustang, and what a story here. Earlier this season, Dino Don and Ronnie Sox ran into each other. That's right, they collided on a racetrack. Both cars were totally demolished. The drivers A-OK, but Nicholson having to go back to his earlier Ford Mustang. It's a couple of years old, but the driver is 52, and he's still right in there with the best of them. Against him, the winningest Chevrolet of Frank Iaconio and Ray Allen, and it's a whole shot for Frank Iaconio, and he extends his lead at the finish. Iaconio wins it 8.66 seconds to a slowing 8.82 for Dino Don Nicholson. You see Nicholson start to drift towards the outside edge of the track, and then he comes back in towards the center of his lane. That was just enough to give the edge, as allowing Frank Iaconio to pull ahead. And Iaconio will be in the finals against one of these two cars, the Chevrolet of Rare and Morrison from Arlington, Texas. Lee Shepard doing the driving against Bob Glidden, the defending world champion. In fact, he is the 1979 world champ, having wrapped up the title before the world finals ever got underway. For the 15th straight time, Bob Glidden has qualified in the #1 position. The lane just as tricky, that right-hand lane for the Pro Stock cars, as it is for the higher horsepower entries. And Glidden, with a quicker elapsed time the previous round, uses every bit of his horsepower in that Plymouth Arrow to his advantage as he takes the measure of Lee Shepard, 8.60. So he will have lane choice going into the finals against Frank Iaconio. Here you see a close race for the first 100 foot or so, and then it is Bob Glidden all the way to the finish.
Frank Iaconio in the final.
Coming up, we'll be seeing the semifinals of Top Fuel and Funny Car at the World Finals. Back at Ontario Motor Speedway, I'm Dave McClelland, and people are sitting everywhere ready for the action in semifinal round of Top Fuel Eliminator. Dwight Salisbury driving for Larry Frazier does a smoky burnout in that right-hand lane. Again, the burnout designed to heat up the tires, and in this case particularly, put down as much rubber on the racing surface as is possible, because they're trying everything to figure out what to do with this tricky traction condition that exists in that right-hand lane. The competition for Larry Frazier and Dwight Salisbury, the new world champion, Rob Bruins. He's driving the car owned by Gaines Barkley, hailing from a suburb of Seattle, Washington. Salisbury retiring for a couple of years after campaigning his own car for a number of years, then jumping back into the driver's seat in the middle of this season and doing very well for car owner Larry Frazier. Of course, you know the story on Rob Bruins. He parlayed a series of divisional event wins and some fine showings at national events around the country to the 1979 World Champion title. He'd love to double it up right here at the World Finals, making it the World Champion and the World Finals Top Fuel Eliminator all in the same weekend. And a smoky lead by Dwight Salisbury. The track just not enough traction to hold the 2,000-plus horsepower. I'm sure it's detuned from that point. As you see, just frying the tires is Dwight Salisbury, and that's all Rob Bruins needed to set low elapsed time of eliminations at 6.04 seconds. Bruins, with that 6.04, getting out of his car, hoping it will hold up to where he can get the lane choice for the finals. It will be against one of these two drivers, Big Daddy Don Garlits or Dave Settles. The final race of the semifinal round, the Blue Max Dragster. The car's owned by Raymond Beadle, Foster Yancey, and Brad Camp. And Dave Settles, a very competent driver out of Dallas, Texas, does the driving. But he's got his work cut out for him as Big Daddy Don Garlits has got that left-hand lane. He ran a fine 6.06 seconds in it, the round of 4. And Garlits easily outdistancing Settles. But the lane choice will go to Bruin, 6.08 seconds at 240 miles an hour. So it may be the break that Bruins needs to double it up. The world champion and the world finals champ all in the same weekend. Garlits, as you can see, just extends his lead with that fine 6.08 at 240 miles an hour.
Big Daddy, you mentioned earlier you'd been taking power out of the engine. What do you do now as Rob Bruins will no doubt put you in that right-hand lane for the final?
I'll tune for that lane.
Is it possible as it cools off that that lane could get a little better?
You can win this race out of that lane.
With what tactic?
I don't want to talk about that.
Big Daddy being a little cagey, and who wouldn't be, going against Rob Bruins for a lot of money.
Not about ready to give away the secrets that he may try to use as he goes into the final of Top Fuel Eliminator against Rob Bruins. Here is Gordy Bonham, the Nationals champion. He's got that right lane. Let's see how he can do as he comes up against the Hawaiian, the car owned by Roland Leong and driven by Ron Colson. In the previous round, Colson ran a 6.35 second elapsed time, while Bonham ran a 6.40. Just 0.05 of a second separated their performances. Bear in mind they were both in the left lane in the previous round, and by virtue of the lower ET, the lane choice going to Ron Colson here in the semifinals. Together, and Colson goes out of control and crosses the center line, which means automatic disqualification. So Gordy Bonham moves into the finals. A fine 6.64 second elapsed time. His speed 231 as the best time turned yet today, seems, in that right-hand lane by Gordy Bonham. Right here is Ron Colson out of control. You see him heading into that right-hand lane. He backs off the throttle, turns the wheel back to the left, but it's too late. He's already crossed the center line, and that means instant disqualification. You can't cross the center line in any run in competition. Here's Gordy Bonham and Ron Colson.
Gordy Bonham, possibly the only driver this year to make it into 3 final rounds in national event competition.
Well, if that's the case, we're going to have to win it. I mean, we came here, there's only one thing to do, and that's win the darn thing.
Don Garlits just told me that a man can win this race in that right-hand lane.
He's not wrong. I don't know what we ran, but it felt pretty good for that lane. It felt the best run I've, felt or seen all weekend in that lane.
In the 660s, and let's go back up to the starting line and see if you win lane choice.
Okay.
Okay, let's watch.
As Gordy Bonham watches, John Force hopefully overcomes his mistake of the previous round and will start the car in low gear off the starting line. He had a big break as he wanted his crew member directing him back into his own tracks, trying for the traction that he hopes against hope will be there. Alongside of him, Trip Shoemake. Driving for Johnny Loper. Shoemake hailing out of Phoenix, Arizona. As we told Steve a little bit earlier, this is the first time he got to the semifinals of a national event this year. In the previous round, Shoemake with a 6.60 easily outdistanced the time by John Force. But all important right now is how quick will they run to determine who gets the lane choice in the finals against Gordy Bonham. And they both smoke the tires. John Force drifting out towards the guardrail. He backs out of it and gets back in it, but it's too late as Trip Shoemake moves into the finals. His elapsed time, 6.88 seconds, and a dejected crew member heads back for John Force's crew to go down and tow the car back as race day is over for John Force. You see the two cars both losing traction right off the starting line, and Shoemake, recovering the quickest, gets the traction back and gets across the finish line first.
Well, the little guy is walking tall here today at the World Finals. I think this is your first ever final round appearance, and it's a big race.
It is. It's the first time I've ever been in an NHRA final. Wow, I'm awed.
Now, you won't have lane choice, but it's beginning to look like it's evening out.
Yeah, Yeah, I won't. I'm not really sure what to do, but it's been so much luck all day, you know. I figure we can just, at least as long as we're in the final, it helps out my crew and helps out everybody, you know. It's been a long weekend.
Pumps everybody up for the season to come.
Yeah, we had such a bad season anyway, and then to finish...
You had a lot of fires, a lot of burned up bodies. And...
Yes, our second car and my third fire suit.
Trip Shoemaker, it hasn't been a good year, but things are looking up here in the final race of the season. Wife Susie in here, John Loper, who owns the car. Back to you, David.
Steve, we're getting set for the finals of Top Fuel, Funny Car, and Pro Stock here at the World Finals. It's incredible the amount of work that is performed on these cars in the short time between the rounds of elimination. In Trip Shoemaker's area crewman taking the wheels and tires off, while car owner Johnny Loper under the rear of the vehicle checking something out in the rear end. Wife Susie Shoemaker somewhat pensive as she is watching the crew working on the car, and driver and husband Trip Shoemaker in adjusting the clutch and working on the rear of the motor. Let's go over to Gordy Bonnen's pit.
There's a real thrash going on here at the Canadian pacemaker car of Gordy Bonnen. Jerry Verhill's the crew chief. I understand you haven't heard a thing. What's all this thrash?
Well, we want to win, so we thought we better look and make sure. You know how these things are. They can break, and you don't even know it. So.
U.S. Nationals, you didn't hurt a part, but you field strip at every run.
We put 8 pistons in it today to start with, because the 8 that were in when we got here were from Indy.
How about your driver here? What do you think of his job today?
Doing fine, just like always. Don't worry about him.
Do you talk to him at all? Do you give him any advice on driving? He doesn't bother you about the motor, you don't bother him.
I take care of this, and he takes care of that, and if we both do our job, we'll come out okay, right?
And it's been a great team so far.
Yeah, I think so.
While the funny cars get ready, it's time for the finals in Pro Stock. Wearing the big number 1 is the Plymouth Arrow of Bob Glidden, signifying he's the defending world champion, and he's also the new world champ, having wrapped up that title before ever coming to Ontario in the World Finals. He's racing against the only man to beat him this year, Frank Iaconio from Totowa, New Jersey, in the Chevy Camaro. And a whole shot for Iaconio puts him about a foot ahead of Glidden. Can he hold on for the win? Oh, what a close race to the finish. And it's Bob Glidden wins it. A tremendous close race. 8.65 seconds. The winning time for Glidden, 8.74 seconds. Almost a tenth of a second slower, but a lot quicker off the starting line was Frank Iaconio. At the finish, though, it's where it's important, and that's where Bob Glidden gets first by just a matter of inches.
Dave Bob Glidden trying to shed himself of all of the safety equipment. You can see the sturdy roll cage built in this car that houses a man who has broken yet another record, drag racing's first ever 5-time world champion. Congratulations.
Thank you, Steve.
We had to race for this one.
Oh, those guys are terrible on me. I'll tell you, Iaconio was really tough on me.
They're really the only guys that have beaten you with any consistency at all.
Well, they've got their car, their performance is really good, and Iaconio is quite a driver.
Well, congratulations to you, Etta, the boys. It's great. 5 times world champ, Bob Glidden.
Thank you.
You bet.
Back on the starting line, all the work is over for the funny cars as they're backing through their own smoke after a long burnout. Trip Shoemaker has the problem of the right-hand lane as wife Susie backing him into his own track, hoping that he can find the traction that no one else has found. His competition, Gordy Bonnen, won his race in that right-hand lane the previous round as Ron Colson crossed the center line, and he ran quick enough to gain the lane choice over Trip Shoemaker. But this track has been very tricky in both lanes all day long. So it really is anybody's race at this time. Both very competent, very capable drivers. The third appearance in the finals of the national event. Thus far in 1979 for Gordy Bonnen. As you heard Trip tell us earlier, this is the first time he's ever been there, and he's almost in awe of the whole thing. The burnouts are over. Crew Chief Jerry Verhill directing driver Gordy Bonnen to the starting line. Shoemaker approaching those light beams for the electronic starting system known as the Christmas tree. The tree goes green, and both cars smoke the tires. Gordy Bonnen recovers and heads across the finish line first. For the third time this season, Gordy Bonnen wins an NHRA national event. The elapsed time for Bonin, 6.53 at 234 miles an hour. You see Shoemake just smoking the tires ever so slightly, but he's obviously down on power as Gordy Bonin streaks across the finish line to take home the World Finals title back to Delta, British Columbia, Canada.
Well, out the jack-in-the-box comes Dave McClellan, as he has won the Winston World Finals, Super Nationals, and Funny Car Eliminator. The World Championship may be going to Raymond Beadle, but you're the only guy all year in Funny Car that won 3 national events. Congrats.
Thanks, Steve. What a battle.
You're bushed, huh?
I'm mentally exhausted. I mean, to figure this track out, Jerry and I have been put in 100 hours this weekend.
Were you a little worried when you saw him maybe get out first that he would hook up in that line?
No, his car always moves real hard in the start line. We got this thing choked up so bad that it's like at Indy. The thing leaves real bad, but...
Choked up, you mean what?
Tight clutch.
Okay. Well, congratulations to you and the Pacemaker team, and the U.S. green again goes back to Canada.
We love it. Thank you very much.
Gordy Bonin.
A very tired but happy man, Gordy Bonin, winning Funny Car Eliminator. Back in the pits for Top Fuel Eliminator, quite a thrash going on in Rob Bruin's pit area. As you see the crew working hard, putting the engine back together. Having taken it completely apart, Bruins and the crew working hard to get it back together for the final. As in Don Garlett's pit area, things, by contrast, a little more relaxed. Big Daddy, you heard him tell us earlier that he can win the race in the right-hand lane. And nobody is better at reading a racetrack than Big Daddy Don Garlitz. We'll be back with the finals of Top Fuel Eliminator in just a moment. This is what the huge crowd at Ontario Motor Speedway has been waiting to see. Big Daddy Don Garlitz against the new world champion Rob Bruin. And Bruins is the defending champion here at the World Finals, and he, in this race, has got the good lane, as Garlitz, by virtue of elapsed times, only 0.04 of a second apart, but he was the slower time of the two in the semifinals, gets the bad lane. We've got word that Steve knows something about this race.
Dave, no one is more particular about weight on a race car than Big Daddy Don Garlitz. He likes them featherweight. Yet his crew confided in me in the staging lanes that Big Daddy has added a significant amount of weight to the rear end of this car, trying to get it to hook up in that right-hand lane. He is crafty. Let's see what happens.
We'll know in just a couple of moments, Steve, as both cars have completed their burnouts. They're creeping into the staging beams. Will the weight make the difference for Big Daddy? The light's green, and it's Rob Bruins out first, but Bruins is out of control. He backs out of it, and here comes Garlitz. And Don Garlitz, Big Daddy, proves it again. He wins it to the jubilation of this crowd. They are going crazy. Here you see Bruins just out of control. Heads right towards Don Garlitz, has to lift out of it, and then slowly but surely, here comes the swamp rat from Florida, Big Daddy Don Garlitz.
Hey, Big Daddy, a happy Big Daddy. Bails out of his race car, but still opens the water petcock, force of habit, I guess. Big's going to check the motor over, even though he has already won the Top Fuel title here at this Winston World Finals. He's going to get his helmet off here, and we're going to try to talk to him. I know he's smiling. I can't even see him yet. Oh, boy. You did it. The right lane, just like you said you would.
Well, I smoked the tires, and he had me. And I'll be darned if he didn't go out of control and nearly cross the center line, and that's all I needed, and it just gathered him right up.
You know, going into this event, I've never seen so many of the supposed experts pick one guy. Everybody says they're not going to beat Big Daddy on this racetrack. He's just too crafty.
It was a racetrack that needed a lot of experience, no question about it. And I got one thing to say about it. There's a lot of people complaining about the track wasn't prepared properly, but no clutches were thrown out at this race. And if this is what it takes to have us have a safe race, I'm all for it.
Here's Rob Bruins. Robbie?
Congratulations, Rob, again for winning the world championship. You know, you had me, and the thing got out of shape. Yeah. And you lifted. You got it. It almost crossed the center. I know. I had to. And that's just all a little break on me.
They've been calling this a driver's race, and the guy that's been driving these things forever won it.
We got the world champion here, and I'm proud of him.
He's a worthy one, isn't he?
He's a nice young man, and we're going to love to have him as our champion this year.
Thanks very much.
Very representative of the sport.
Dave, what can I say? A great conclusion to a fantastic event. Thank you.